Hello, and welcome back, adventurers. I assume you are back to know if you can reason with the Fae. Well, let me share my knowledge so you can make an informed decision. The people of the Shadow Rift are the Arak, or Shadow Elves, or, and more correctly, a Shadow Fae. Arak culture is cobbled together from all the moral cultures Arak or the Shadow Rift has ever boarded. Thus, moral visitors may find fragments of Darkanese, Barovian, Tepestani, and the dead Arakan human cultures, all mingled together. Far from being reassuring, this feature serves only to make moral visitors even more uncomfortable. Our cultures have been reproduced, mimicked by a race that can no longer remember why such things as houses, fashions, and governments are important. As such, they appear subtly wrong. Shadow Rift inhabitants are multiple and unique. Shapeshifters, ghostly humanoids, demonic berserkers, and myriad other horrors. These creatures are all Arak, a single race of uniquely diverse in appearance and abilities. Hard as it may to believe, all young Arak look similar. It is only as they grow older that their forms differentiate. Their final appearance reflects and is shaped by their personality. An Arak that is interested in death and decay would join the Sith, all of whom are slender, pale, and morbid. If an Arak suffers a great change in its outlook, it can even change partway through its life, although this transformation is rare. After the Erlking's death in the passage through the Obsidian Gate, the Shadow Elves split into two factions, each ruled by one of his children. His daughter Maeve became the Fairy Queen, ruler of the Seelie court, the She, Portune, Fear, and Alvin. His son Lot refused to take the title king out of respect for his father and hence became the Prince of Shadows, sovereign of the Unseelie court, the Sith, Mirian, Pauri, and Tag. Maeve and Lot jointly ruled the Arak from the Malakot Palace, each passing judgment over his or her respective subjects and jointly deciding issues of import to all Arak. Each court rules the Rift for half a year. During this time, the ruler of the reigning court resides at the Malachite Palace. The ruler's word is law and dispenses to every corner of the domain by the air elementals. Like any ruler, the twins deliver judgment of criminals, pass laws, and decide issues of import. On the 2 days of a year, when the palace changes hands, Lot and Maeve hold court together. When Maeve is in power, Lot broods in his dark palace in Bellevue. When Lot is in power, Maeve either entertains in the castle in Esmerth or troops around the Greenlands, stopping to hold court where the fancy takes her. While the Unseelie court is definitely evil, so far as their attitudes go towards other not of their kind, the Seelie court is not necessarily good. Rather, it is essentially neutral so far as the non-Arak races of the world above are concerned. Alvin, Portune, and Seelie Fear courtiers represent the Seelie court. They have a relatively benign attitude to mortals. While they can be spiteful or destructive, particularly if offended, on the whole they see mortals as too interesting to destroy. The Seelie court is basically a cult of personality dominated by Maeve, the Fairy Queen. All power and influence radiate from her. All she seem to use their beauty as weapon, but Maeve has perfected the art. Because the queen is so integral to the Seelie court, it is understandably much like her, passionate, temptatious, and wild. The court often engages in banquets, bardic celebrations, tournaments, all realm of competition in which participants strive to impress Maeve and win a favor. While Lot's punishments are usually physical beatings or imprisonment, Maeve uses psychological methods, toying with prisoners and sending them on hopeless quests to gain forgiveness. She does not share Lot's paranoia towards the Twilight. Although she is concerned and plans for the day when he finally escapes, she does not let the possibility dominate her life as Lot does. The Unseelie court is dominated by the sinister but elegant Sith, Mirian, Tag, Unseelie Fear, and Pauri. It is far more ordered and formal than the Seelie court, as Lot rules tyrannically. He brooks no opposition, and his cold, distant cruelty is legendary. Lot's court idolized the quiet-spoken cripple king. Many rulers would have lost control of the court when so publicly discovered trying to free their people's greatest enemy and then being so badly injured they can barely move. Instead, Lot has used his trials to wield his court into an efficient, vigilant force dedicated to opposing the Twilight. The Unseelie Fae are quite well known on the surface. Unlike the Seelie, they believe mortals are little more than animals. Like all Fae, they are fascinated by mortals, but their fascination is more dispassionate. Humans are definitely not welcome at the Unseelie court. The wholly practical brag, for their part, truly belong neither to the one court or the other, devoting all of their attention to the endless tasks of shaping stone in such a way that it will forever withstand the ravages of time. They work for both courts with equal willingness, asking only some interesting task to challenge their architectural and engineering skills. The laws the rulers create are chaotically enforced by the Myrian, who act as both police and guards for the Shadow Rift. It is commonly understood that most laws, especially those that spring from the Seelie court, are guidelines rather than absolute strictures. The Fae are expected to obey when Sif, she or Myrian are watching, but otherwise don't have to. This attitude has been changing in recent decades. Lot has always been a tyrant, although when he ruled jointly with Maeve, or his attention was focused on opening the Obsidian Gate, his comments were taken with a grain of salt. Now, however, he is taking complete control in order to prevent the Twilight from gaining influence in the Greenlands. Myrian enforcement patrols are far more common, and his punishments for those who found disobeying his laws are becoming harsher. The other Iraq are learning that Lot means what he says. So far, obvious discontent is rare, but it is becoming more common. The only law that is always universally obeyed is the law of Iraq. Prior to the exodus from the Plane of Shadow, the Twilight mercilessly tormented the Iraq, harming them and pitting them against each other for sport. Just before the Iraq escaped the Sorceress Fiend's rule, the Erlking laid down the law that now bears his name. No Shadow Elf shall kill another Shadow Elf. The penalty for breaking the law of Iraq is shunning. Suspects are dragged before Lot or Maeve and their case is heard. If found guilty, their names are written into a piece of parchment and dropped into the eternal flames at the heart of the Malachite Palace. This act mystically alerts all the Shadow Fae in the Rift that the individual is found guilty. From that point, no other Fae will ever speak to, touch, or interact in any way with the one who has broken Iraq's law. Such offenders tend to sequester themselves in the wild regions of the Shadow Rift or exile themselves to the surrounding domains. Cut off from all normal interaction with their own kind, these criminals are usually driven mad by an eternity alone with their own thoughts and are, as a rule, very dangerous. As I have stated, the Iraq's lifestyle is a hodgepodge of elements plundered from mortals and altered to suit their own needs or desires. Iraq are immortal, only sunlight or necromancy can permanently destroy them. Other deaths only inconvenience them for a while, and they rise refreshed at a different time and place. Under normal circumstances, their lives can be lost and so have no real meaning to them. So the Iraq mimic mortals to pass the time and try to find some purpose in their own existence. Shadow Fae, like all the Fae, gain all the sustenance they need from their ties to the earth. The shadow energies that fill the Shadow Rift sustain them completely. However, they continue to eat solid food, despite having no need of it, purely for the sensual stimulation the taste brings. This, I believe, is the Iraq lifestyle in a nutshell. They live only for pleasure and only do the things they find pleasurable. Although they are at no risk from exposure to the elements, many build houses as we do, simply because they enjoy the process of creation, maintenance, and then watching it decay. A Fae may pursue single activity for a century, but then stop without hesitation the moment they grow bored. The Iraq also replicate our cultures for a more noble reason, to preserve the aspects they appreciate from the destruction at the hands of time. Changelings are a clear example of it. The Iraq find persons of great beauty, or courage, or talent, and spirit them away to preserve their unusual ability for all eternity. Incredibly, they see this as a reward rather than a curse of endless empty existence as half a person. Shadow Fae do not as a whole worship any gods. While the Iraq do accept the god exists, they do not believe they have any power over the Shadow Fae or any place in their lives. The Twilight was their god and they escaped him. Other gods belong to mortals. A few occasionally take up the trappings of religion, but this choice is motivated more by the desire for entertainment than by the faith. The Iraq completely revile only one religion, the cult of the Spider Queen. Only the most decadent and deranged worship this goddess, and when they are found, they are mercilessly driven from the Greenlands. The cruel rites of the Spider Queen and the loneliness caused by the isolation drives these creatures to insanity, and they become a threat to mortal and immortal alike. The cult of the Spider Queen has very little hierarchy. All of her priests are considered equal in the eyes of the church. The only exception is the High Priestess, who speaks for the Spider Queen herself. However, the Spider Queen is the patron of greed, deceit, and spite. The murder, even of the High Priest, is legitimate, if not desirable way to gain worldly power and advancement in the church. Rather than celebrating martyrs, the cult of the Spider Queen celebrates cold-hearted killers, those who lie and cheat to get ahead and those who seek their own pleasure at the expense of others. Many have a druidic reverence for nature, but this reverence is not personified as a god and worship is not organized in churches. The Fey Druids are ideologically divided into 3 factions. The Alvin and the Fey Fortune, who become Druids, favor the first, which has basically benevolent aspect. They see the natural world as something of a garden. Plants should be induced to grow and produce fruit to feed animals, which thrive until they in turn nourish the plants. The Fae, according to this faction, are caretakers. Their duty is to ensure the cycle of life continues smoothly for all eternity, which includes taking steps to prevent any one species from coming to dominate. The second, however, maintains that nature has no structure or order. The natural state of the world is chaos, and anything that attempts to impose order upon it is unnatural and therefore must be disposed of. This Fae, which includes Satyrs, Tag, and Cimmerian, attempt to remove order from the world. These actions frequently bring them into conflict with more orderly Fae and with mortals. They make no attempt to preserve the balance of species. They believe that life itself is valuable, not the diversity. The final faction is dominated by the Tag. They believe intelligent mortal life is an aberration and must be removed. Only animals, plants, and immortals should exist. Of these factions, they are most active on the surface, although this activity is always destructive and malevolent. They attack travelers, ravage small communities, and spoil harvests to punish mortals. They see the destruction as the casualties of war. The plant and animal population will recover, but once eradicated, intelligence life will not return. Thank you so much for your time, patient listeners. May your run-in with the Fae be fortunate, and as always, take care while crossing the mists.